Welcome to another episode of the Apex Perspective podcast. Today I have with me Joy, who is currently a principal software engineer at Amazon. Now, Joy started off her career as a software engineer and subsequently, of course, once again became a principal engineer at Amazon. Now, Joy, can you tell me a little bit more about your background, first as to why you became technical and what led you to Amazon?
Why did I choose Amazon? What was the second question?
Yeah, what led you to Amazon essentially?
What led me to Amazon? Yeah, I had an interesting journey. I'm sure everybody has a unique journey. Uh, but I started my career actually in Beijing, in Microsoft. And, it was quite an adventure because I didn't know before going to Beijing, English would not be understood so well. And it was quite an adventure, as I was saying. I worked there for 2 years in Microsoft and a little bit more than 2 years. And then I was always in tech because I did my undergrad also in computer science. And that's why I was in Microsoft. But while working there, I met amazing leaders, women who were like from MIT, Stanford. And I was really curious, maybe, I'm missing out on something if I'm I'm not saying everybody should go to MIT and Stanford, but if you have the opportunity, sure, you should. So I applied to those top universities, just like I had this thirst in me that maybe I'll learn something very interesting. So I did master's in Stanford, and then I joined back in Microsoft. That was just a coincidence. It didn't have a connection with the previous work, but I worked here in Bay Area ever since I graduated from Stanford. So I was in Microsoft, then I worked in Lyft, and then I've been in Amazon for like 9 years, which is quite a long time. So that's what led me to Amazon, basically, coasting through like different tech companies. But if you want to know more about why I decided to be tech, I can dive a little more on that.
Certainly. Yeah. What was the reasoning behind getting into CS specifically? Because you knew quite early on that's something you wanted to do.
It's a very boring answer. It's just because, where I grew up in Bangladesh. And that's what like top students either become an engineer or a doctor. So, I didn't even have biology. Yeah, I didn't even have biology because my dad was a doctor and I knew I don't want to be a doctor. So I just dropped biology very early on so nobody can make me a doctor. And then like the hierarchy was like you either first study computer science, then electrical engineering. And I was interested in computer. I dabble a little bit in programming language. It seemed interesting enough. There's so much more in other than like coding actually in computer science once you learn, And I finally, I think Finding Nemo is what broke me. I was like, I want to be able to make this amazing animation. I didn't go to animation though, but that was like, those are the things that push me towards like, I want to be in CS.
Right. That's very interesting. So when you got into your career, I saw that you started off in software engineering and later on you got into the senior roles. My question for you is, was there a particular point in your career where you identified not just understanding the technical part of things is important, but rather understanding the end product, the end user, and the business outcome itself is actually quite relevant? Was there a particular point where you noticed that?
Yeah, I think what I noticed, like, when I was very early in my career, I'll be pretty blunt. I would look at some leaders, I'll be like, I can do his or her job. Why am I not there? And then you would like, it's not like I'm trying to judge that person. It's mainly like, what am I really lacking? Even though I just started my career, surely I need more experience. But what experience could, like, what am I gaining experience in? It's not necessarily in coding. It's more, the more important part is understanding your customer, whoever the customer is, right? And connecting the dot, like not just doing the task you're assigned, rather, is it benefiting anybody? If it's not, it's really not worth it. And also soft skill, which I guess not your focus right now, but soft skill is actually more important than tech skill, the higher up you go. It's about like managing, it's not like managing upper end, it's managing expectation of different stakeholders. And different stakeholders are actually like some are tech, some are non-tech. There's a variety of stakeholder you need to manage when you become a high-level IC. So how you satisfy them and how you make sure like you're earning their trust. And at the same time, if you have a customer, you need to be absolutely customer obsessed. Sometimes there are decisions you have to take, right? When you make hard decision, you always have to care about your customer first. And then you make cuts in other places where the customer doesn't get impacted.
And before we get to your perspectives on managing expectations, which is what you just mentioned, I'd love to understand how your perspective on your technical work changed once you understood the importance of the end user. I know you said that you used to be assigned a task and you executed the task, but it changes after you understand this is meant for an end user. So how did your perspective change?
I would say, once you get more exposure, like say when I just joined the industry, right? I was not being part of this meeting where a lot of things are decided. So what I was handed on was initially task, but over time, once you gain more experience, once you start leading, one thing that helped me, like I switched to a startup in between. When you
Mhm.
come to a startup, then you actually have a bigger vision. Like big companies, you get sometimes as a junior engineer when you're starting off a smaller vision. But when you get the
Mhm.
bigger vision, you understand like you have the entire end-to-end product that you are managing. So I think that really helped me in connecting the dot, like being, I'm not saying being on call help. Nobody wants to be on call. But what
Mhm.
helped though, like say I was developing a software for valets basically. So like in the middle of the night something broke and you're fixing it, so you understand what customer is experiencing,
What
where
moves the
they're
needle?
mind. Yeah, how do you move the needle, right? So after you connect the dot, then you realize that your tech work, how many unit tests you write or integration tests you do, while it's important, but at the end of the day, what is the most important thing is, are you making any progress to customers life?
Yeah, I love that. And you're talking about managing expectations across multiple sectors. What did you mean by that, and why is that particularly relevant as you go up?
Currently what I'm working on, I can't give too much detail, but say I have
Sure.
PMs, PMs like product manager, right?
Of
Who are
course.
from another team, but they say I work in Amazon Music Catalog. They're expecting something from me. Say the number is in precision recall. So, like from PM perspective, they care about the number, but the number is still very nuanced in a lot of the cases. So, like,
Hmm.
how do you still make them agree to a lower precision recall by explaining the nuances that, while on the important category, I would still have better precision recall, but when, because you can't be best in everything in some cases, like, but how are you
Right.
still making a difference in the customer experience? So explaining that. So say PM, I satisfy like that. But then if I'm working with another principal engineer, I have to explain him or her from the technical perspective that's, so look, this is the audio signals we have currently. This is the best we can
Hmm.
do. But if you want
Yes.
more improvement, it needs more investment. So like, are
Right.
you aligned that, we generate more audio signals for this, etc. So like
Right.
different people, you need to have different conversation, but regardless, you have to address pain point. One of the mistakes that we do earlier, at
Hmm.
least from in my career, is that sometimes you hear the voices and you think, oh, but I'm doing the right work, it's not important to explain. But that's what actually a mistake, because if you don't explain, they would not know what you're doing and they would feel unheard. And
Hmm.
that actually builds up, not resentment is a strong word, but that like doesn't help building trust, I guess.
Right.
So even if it feels redundant, you have to manage each of those stakeholders and explain them in their vocabulary what they're looking for, why is it why is it not working out, and what can be done to mitigate that.
Very interesting. And I actually study a lot about investment making and mergers and acquisitions. And when you have global teams, what you have to end up doing is the principal person involved in managing those teams, they have to speak and communicate in a way that actually resonates with each team member, especially globally. This is actually a very similar concept to what you're talking about here. It's when you're talking about different departments, you have to definitely create the link and speak in their own languages and be able to
Mhm.
communicate these ideas, which is very interesting to me. But as a principal engineer,
Yeah,
and go ahead.
one of I want to bring up, like when I was in China, I work in Beijing, as I was mentioning. Like that time in 2007, sometimes the video is slow. Like there is like, a lot of miscommunication that also happens. So over time, you understand communication is actually the core of being successful or being effective.
Right, and this is something I actually got from another principal engineer who led 200-person team here in Amazon. So that was really interesting. And the other question I was going to ask you about was really your approach to management of other people. I think from my experience of talking to other engineers, they've had the chance to mentor other engineers and lead other engineering teams. And a question for you is, when you've approached it before, if you've had the chance to do so, what was that transition like, going from mostly having a technical understanding to then going forward with actually speaking with and mentoring other engineers, if you've had that chance?
Yeah, I have mentored other engineers. Usually, for me, mentoring is, of course, not about me. It's the person who I'm mentoring. So, how I typically mentor is figure out what is really their goal. Why do they need me as a mentor? Can I
Hmm.
really add any value? If I don't add value, I don't like spending my time in that thing. So first, align with what their goal is. So, say if somebody wants to get promotion, say, right? So I would help them in building their portfolio better. Like say the work they're
Hmm.
doing, I'll discuss it with them. But sometimes also I've mentored a lot of women where
Hmm.
like it's workplaces. I would, even though it's fair, but there is still, I wouldn't say judgment. Judgment again is a strong word, but
Hmm.
women do face different sort of situation overall. So like I try to help them and try to give them confidence. So like depending on what their aim is, my mentorship is like I would maintain a document, like what are your targets, what can we achieve by say 3 months, say if you have trouble, say speaking up your concern because whether you're shy or whatever, what can you do?
Hmm.
One of my suggestion, I'll give an example, is like prepare your note from before every time, so you can have a more structured conversation. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. So what was really interesting about what you're mentioning is your different approach to helping women specifically. And of course, you're a tech leader and a tech leader as a woman, and that's a little bit more difficult to achieve. So how do you approach mentoring women a little bit differently?
I tell them all the horrible experiences I've had, and how
Hmm.
do I uh, take them in my stride and tell them like at the end what matters. At the end your work does matter. So like it is, I would say, a little bit lonely in tech because there aren't
Right.
other women. So you see actually a lot of women, they start as an IC and they would fall out. Like in my cohort of PEs, there are maybe 10 or 11 PEs and there's one other woman. So it's like it's
Mhm.
very I wouldn't say lonely. Like I see overall like people who have more extroverted personality are easier to um, strive in the tech
Right.
world as a woman, because you have to just ignore the fact there's going to be only you and a bunch of other guys and still be very comfortable to do your best work, because if you're uncomfortable you can't really be
Of course.
doing best work, right? So I think like extroverted personality helps a little bit. You can just ignore the fact, and like for me, I don't even care like if there's male developer, female developer, they're all the same to me. But to get to that understanding, it takes some time, because it is hard. You want to feel included sometimes. Like say every time we have an offsite, any company, I'm not blaming Amazon or Microsoft or
Mhm.
anybody, is usually going to grab some drink after like office, or like going for happy hour. And honestly, a lot of the women I know, they don't like going to bars. I don't
Okay.
even drink, but if I don't go, then I miss connection with my teammates, right? So I would still end up going. So like how you're still comfortable and be in those situations where even if you don't drink. So but it's also a choice for somebody, like somebody who really don't want to do it. I would tell them, why don't you suggest that, why don't we do say something else, like play mini
Hmm.
golf time,
Hmm.
or
Yeah.
go to karaoke, or like something they want to do. But
This is
it's
such
hard.
an important. I apologize for interrupting you, but this is such an
Yeah.
important point you're making. I just got off an interview with a principal software engineer from Google, and one of the components he values in his teams is how cohesive the team is. And spending time outside of the workplace is one of the best ways to do that. Because when a
Correct.
work problem comes, the exchange of ideas is a lot easier when there's actual trust involved in the process, and
100%.
that
Yeah.
trust, that's actually part of the process of becoming an effective principal engineer, right? So this is
Mhm.
an added layer of difficulty for women in tech that is a real problem, right? So what really kept you going on the mindset end? And because that's actually a lot more difficult, it's an extra layer of what's required of you.
It is, and a lot of work stuff actually get done in the bar. So
Mhm.
you'd be surprised. Like we do often discussion, and like suddenly decide, oh yeah, we need to build this engine, right? So if you don't go out, you actually miss out. So as I said, I have a very extroverted personality. So even
Mhm.
I don't really drink. I would still like I don't usually advise to all the other engineers like don't miss out on social engagement. Those are the most important part of your work actually. The connections you build. And as a
Mhm.
principal engineer, I don't know what other principal engineer said, networking is half the work done, because
Right.
you as a PE, most of the time it's about knowing the right person, asking them the problem if they had solved it, or they can refer you to another subject matter expert. So that
Mhm.
networking helps more than anything. So
Mhm.
whenever you have an opportunity to do the networking, you need to do it.
Mhm.
If it's, as I said, if it's pushing you out of your comfort zone, voice your concern. There's always an organizer. Maybe you can
Right.
take a hit one time where you go somewhere where, and you don't stay long maybe, but still go. But the next time you can ask like, okay, maybe this time can we not have it at a bar? Bar is just an example. Whatever you're not
Right.
comfortable,
Right.
can we just grab some quick bite, or go to like I don't know, ferry ride or something, like something you want to do. you can always try to advocate for it, but I would be honest, it is very hard.
Well, I can really appreciate you actually involving the value in actual social engagements. I think it's hard to extract or understand how can that be that can be actually valuable for a technical leader, but there are definitely opportunities for increased
No, it's
trust and
really,
other.
as I said, that's
Yeah.
probably one of the most valuable things. So I am trying to travel to Bangalore because we have an India team, and it's
Hmm.
very hard for me to travel, honestly, because I have three kids. One
Right.
of and is very small, 1 year old. But I would still want to go is because if I don't go, I lose touch, and then it's very hard
Mhm.
for me. Like they become floating face in the camera,
Right.
right?
Right.
So I don't have connection. I don't really connect to what they're working on. How can I help them? So for me to, like you mentioned, that another P who was driving 200 people team.
Right.
Our team is not as big as like 100 people, but
Mhm.
half of them are in India. So if I don't connect 100 like devs, so if I don't connect with them, I miss out on the 100 of the developers who I would be adding value to. So like I would go even travel internationally when it's so hard for me, just to make
Mhm.
sure that my work is being effective.
Mhm. And before we have a conversation to a little bit more about you on the personal side, I'd love to get your opinion on the use of AI and AI
Mhm.
in engineering. How do you think AI is going to transform engineering in the future?
It has already transformed so much, like
Mhm.
coding wise, I think. So that's why I think coding won't be the biggest problem to solve maybe in a couple of years. It's
Mhm.
mainly the idea and connecting the idea with the technology and like
Yes.
how you execute it. So yeah, that's why people need to be really AI savvy to also understand the real world problems that they're going to solve, because like just being technically smart won't cut it anymore.
Mhm. And another aspect is the limitations of AI as well. I interviewed a principal AI engineer from McKinsey very recently, and yes, AI is very capable. Yes, it can produce code, but there are still hallucinations, right?
Oh
And
yeah,
this,
100% of the time. There, if you write a big code, there will be like at least, it's very lazy. I would be honest, lazy, and in terms of it would do bare minimum the coding, so it won't do the most efficient code. So you'd still
yes,
need to know and redirect it. Like say I was doing something where there was an existing file it could reuse, but it created a similar file with the same type of attribute. So I had to tell it like, can you please reuse this? It's a simple example, but like it's
right.
really good in unit testing and all that. But at the same time, it unit tests its own mistake. So
Mhm.
if it made some mistake, the unit test will just amplify the mistake. It won't really solve it. So you still need to know what logic you're doing, what wiring you want to at least
Yes.
code review it yourself.
Yeah, a lot of people talk about the benefits of AI, and I think that that's very good. It can make things a lot more efficient, but there are still requirements of having human in the loop, especially for like healthcare, finance. These are industries where a hallucination is a massive vulnerability. It's a massive legal risk, right? So you have to be careful with these situations. But I can appreciate that you're pointing these out. Like these aren't fully capable by itself themselves right now.
But
So I
it's
appreciate
doing
that.
so good. I think it will get there, honestly.
It
So
will, yes.
yeah, it's like initially when I started, I was always disappointed. I think now it's at a point where I'm less disappointed, which makes me disappointed in us that uh, what does like engineer's future hold? But we'll see.
Well, the interesting question is what about the entry levels, right? Those are already going away right now. But what
Right.
happens? What happens in 10 years from now when those entries who never got the job in the first place are not even entering the industry? What happens to the future engineers
Right.
that
And then how would you get more senior level engineers? Because nobody's
yes.
entering the industry. So
Maybe in a year from now or 2 years from now, we'll have to have you back on the podcast and then get your insights on that as well. So that'll be interesting. So sounds
yeah.
good. We'll do
Are
now.
you studying computer science, Aryan, or what are you
No,
studying?
business economics, right? So this is
Yes.
I'm getting
So
that
at least
perspective.
you're not in risk for the AI activities.
Well, there's certain processes in place that are going to be automated still, so we'll have that conversation off live. But anyways, what I'd like to do is shift the conversation to a little bit more about you, Joy. And the first
Mhm.
question I have for you is, what is something about your life or about you that you wish more people knew about?
More people knew about.
Hmm.
I guess I'm very creative.
Hmm.
If I were not an engineer, I would have probably be a painter. I still paint.
Hmm.
I have a lot of paintings, and I think I enjoy them most. And probably I also I like so many things. I like climbing a lot, so I climbing. I'm skiing. I'm very adventurous. So if I didn't need to make a living, I would probably be like uh, not a vagabond, but like I wouldn't, ski bum is also a bad word, but just like roam from place to place and do adventure. But it might get boring. But like take adventurous journeys, paint, eat good food, travel around. Uh, yeah, I still do that, but in small scale. Maybe it's still fun because I do it in small scale. I'm a big
Okay.
traveler. Like I always, maybe every year I at least do 3, 4 international travels. So
Hmm. Well, there's probably a lot of differences between you when you're in your 20s versus now. But what do you think is the biggest difference from your personal opinion about you?
I have gained a lot of tolerance over over the time because before it was like my way or highway. In my 20s, like I wanted this certain way. Like how dare you? Don't want me to do that. But now I understand each of the perspective. I'd be like, it's not worth my energy. Like I won't fight every fight, especially as a woman in tech. There's so many things you won't like, and you can't fight every battle. So I pick and choose now, like what is worth my energy. I can't drain my energy in everything. So I think that's the major difference from me. In 20s, I was like always like in a fighting mode. You can't violate my rights. I have to have this, that, and this. And now I understand. This sounds very sad, but women are second class citizen in a lot of the cases. So where I can tolerate, I tolerate. Where I cannot tolerate, I would voice it.
Right. And what's the key to actually going through setbacks and difficulties? Because not only as a woman leader in tech, you're not only experiencing an additional layer of problems, but also an additional layer of problems that most people won't understand.
Mhm.
So, how do you navigate those situations?
Actually, it's hard because, as I said, there are very few like ICs in who are women. So even if I have some issues, it's hard to escalate, I would say. So I would have to
Mhm.
figure it out myself in most cases.
Yeah.
So it is, as I said, it's very hard in a way that you have to be your own support system. So what
Mhm.
probably would have helped, that if you have somehow built up other support system where you can discuss the problem. Like say, I used to run women in Amazon in music.
Mhm.
uh, Group where I was the president. I'm still the
Mhm.
president. I need to restart. I just stopped for a bit. But like I try to create that sense of community where, if you have issue, you can freely talk about it and get very good advice. And we had this
Mhm.
forum. So those things, once things need to be out in the open, like how you're holding podcast, right? Like if people
Mhm.
hear it, they're like, oh, I didn't know this happens. I thought men, women are treated equally. They are in most cases, but there's still so much biases that if I start talking about it, we can do another podcast on it, basically.
Oh my gosh, yes, probably. Well, this was a great conversation. Can you tell me a little bit more about your plans for this year, whether it's going to be on the professional side or personal side?
Professional side, I'm working on something which I can't give too much detail, but it involves a lot of machine learning and AI component. So
Mhm.
professionally, I want to basically finish that with a big bang where I achieve the right amount of precision recall. I know it sounds a little boring,
Mhm.
and probably see some of my mentorship are going well, like where I'm helping some people. So yeah, that's professionally. Personally, fitness is always my goal. I know you lost
Mhm.
70 pounds, right?
Yeah.
So my goal is being functionally very fit. So I can do
Yeah.
one pull up. I used to do zero pull up before. It's not push up, by the way. Push up I can do 25 in a row.
Yeah.
So which is
Pull-ups
also
are
very,
harder.
but pull ups are harder. So I this
Yes.
year I only achieved one pull up. So maybe get up to 5 pull ups. So
Excellent.
I know
Well,
it sounds a minor goal, but basically being fit, being functional, and be present for my family.
very good. And where can people learn more about you? Is LinkedIn the best place to learn about you, or is a different platform better?
Uh, Probably I have Instagram, LinkedIn. Professionally, LinkedIn is good. If they want to know me personally, I have Instagram. So feel free to
Okay.
reach out to me. I reply to messages. If you have any engineering related question, then reach out to me in LinkedIn. If you have any fitness related question or like, any fun activities that I do, which involves, as I was saying, skiing, climbing, feel free to ping me in Instagram.
Cool. Well, thank you for joining me, Joey. It's a pleasure to have you on. This was Aryan Mohindra.